Hey, Adam,
Geez,
one
why,
thing.
why do you think they called bumpers, Gary?
I don't know.
Because they come at the beginning and at the end, like bumpers.
Yeah, Alex, you're a marketing guy. Do you like that design behind Paul? Does that sweet logo thing look pretty cool to you?
Hey, I forgot to hit the record button.
Yeah, that's really professional, isn't it?
Well, this is a professional podcast.
I met her in a parking lot and was handed two little Yorkies. And the only person I knew that knew Yorkies was Paul. So I called Paul and said, Paul.
Sweet Talk is a weekly 20-minute podcast brought to you by the Continuing Education and Workforce Training Division of Idaho State University's College of Technology. Find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and SoundCloud and subscribe today. Now it's time to get started with Sweet Talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sweet Talk, our weekly podcast here at Idaho State University's Continuing Education and Workforce Training. I am, as always, your co-host, Paul Dickey, the Video Instruction Manager and Apprenticeship Coordinator here at Sweet. And as always, joining me is Gary Salazar, our Director. Gary, how are you doing today?
Paul, I'm doing great, and it's glad to have you back. We missed you on the last one, so there's no one who does a better intro of what we do here than you. So it's so cool having you back doing this again.
I am getting pretty good at that, all right?
Yes, you are. Angela Wilhelm was our marketing coordinator. She and I did one without you last time, but we missed you. Angela, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's a Friday right before a 3-day weekend. Most people won't see this until a Wednesday, but we do have a 3-day weekend coming up, and hopefully I can stay inside and away from the 8-degree weather we've been having.
Yes, I'd forgotten all about the 3-day break, so that'll be nice to look forward to. And yeah, it's going to be chilly out there, so everybody, y'all be careful. Hey, we have a wonderful opportunity this morning talking with somebody from Idaho State University over in our financial aid office. James Martin will be joining us and talking about all things financial aid, which is a mystery to me. And I came through a college setting years ago. I still don't understand it. So James, welcome aboard. Glad to have you here, and look forward to a great conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thank you for the invite.
Excellent. We usually start out this thing by letting our guests come on and say a little bit about their background, so the audience gets to know who you are and a little bit about what you do. Could you tell us about yourself a little bit?
Well, I've been in financial aid. I started as a college work study student in the financial aid office at New Mexico State University in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
And I have worked in the field primarily at institutions of higher education. I did work for a loan guarantee agency a long time ago. And I've been here at ISU for 31 years next week.
Whoa.
And I've been the director here for about 9.5 years.
Well, that's
Wow.
incredible. Excellent.
Mhm.
Congratulations on all that experience, and congratulations on running an outstanding shop. Super to have you here. I didn't realize that, and happy birthday when you get there. That's cool.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do as a director of financial aid over there, and what does that shop offer to our students?
As director, my primary responsibility is to make sure that the university stays in compliance with the federal regulations concerning Title IV aid. And those regulations are incredibly extensive. I think the last time they actually counted the number of pages, which is some years ago, there were over 18,000 pages of regulations. We disperse, so far to date this year, we've dispersed $52 million in federal aid to our students for the 22-23 academic year. That's pretty average. The majority of that is student loans, but we have done about $13 million in the Pell Grant and the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, which are for our neediest students. I have a wonderful staff. Most of them have been with me. I got a couple newbies, but most of them have been here. They're very experienced. And as I was telling Paul a little earlier, the smartest thing I can do is stay out of their way. It's I
Yeah,
find you can get phenomenal performance out of people when you set the expectation and then see what they can do. And I haven't
yeah,
been disappointed.
yeah,
Excellent.
you're so right. And your experience brings a heck of a lot of stability to the program, and certainly you're expressing a lot of trust in your team. But that's fantastic for our students too, to have some department here be able to help them through that process. There's a lot. You mentioned two grants. One was the Pell Grant and one was a supplemental grant. I mean, are those the biggies that you deal with, or are there other grants students can get?
Yeah, those are the biggies that we deal with. Those are the only two federal grants the Title IV federal grants that we deal with. Um, we like to consider that the Pell Grant is the base of our financial aid pyramid. Unfortunately, it hasn't kept up with the costs. So it's not our largest program anymore.
Mhm.
Years and years ago, it was. The student loans are definitely our largest program. We have
Mhm.
four basic types of loans. We have the subsidized loans, which undergraduates are eligible for, and it varies depending on what their class level is. We have the unsubsidized loans, which everyone is eligible for, and that's the only federal. Uh, that's one of the federal loans available to graduate students. There's also the Parent Plus loan, which is a loan that the student or the parents would take out on behalf of the students. And then there's the Graduate Plus loan, which is an additional loan that our graduate students can apply for.
And you're keeping track of all of that. Your team is ensuring that when we talk to students, like you said, we have to be compliant with whatever those loan requirements are. But you all
Right.
track all that. So poor students like me, when I came through, don't have to figure out what the heck is a Title IV. I don't understand what Pell means. So I'm really grateful that we have that expertise there. When we started to put together some of the questions for you, Angela wrote up a sheet for us, and she put on these strange letters called FAFSA. What is that?
It's the pre-application for federal student aid. Um, that is the initial applications that all students need to do every year. It's an intimidating form. It's all online now. I don't know anyone that's submitted a paper one in at least a decade. I do remember the days where we would help students fill out hundreds of those every year.
Mhm.
It's um, a new student, a new family coming into college. Uh, they go into the federal system and they set up what's called a federal student aid ID, the FSA ID, and that is probably the most difficult step that they have to do. Um, what that allows them to do is electronically sign their FAFSA. Then they would move into completing the FAFSA, which has all the demographic information, the name, their address, social security numbers, those types of things. And then they have the opportunity to use the IRS data. They can go to the IRS site and draw back in their 1040 information back into the FAFSA and populate those fields in the FAFSA. Or they can enter it manually if for some reason they can't access the federal site. So it can be an intimidating process. I think last fall we went to, I want to say 16 high schools and did FAFSA nights to where we sat down and helped students and their families fill things out.
Yeah.
We helped students here at our office, out at our computer kiosks, complete that task. We try to get as many of them to fill out the FAFSA as possible. In this area, and actually statewide, the college and career counselors at the high school level are very good at keeping their students on task and getting the FAFSA filled out. They're a huge help to us, so we try to keep them up to date with anything that's changing or those types of things. So
Mhm. Mhm.
it's a
That
big,
is-
complex, moving process.
Yeah. But
So-
is the start of it, I'm sorry, Paul, is the start then, James, is that the FAFSA, is that the first thing they have to do?
Correct.
Okay.
The
All right.
FSA ID and then the FAFSA. It's really one process, but once they establish that FSA ID, that becomes their way of accessing their portal in the federal system.
Okay, so after they do that, then then they start figuring out which grant opportunity, or they work with a counselor or with your office to figure out how do I help my payments here?
What happens is they submit it for processing, and then the results are electronically transmitted to us. The student gets what's called a student aid report in the mail, which has the secret number on it, which is called the expected family contribution. And the lower the EFC, the expected family contribution, that's how we determine eligibility for Pell
Ah,
Grant.
okay.
So a family with a 0 EFC would receive the maximum Pell Grant.
Okay, cool. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Paul, you had a question?
No. So it sounds like there's lots of resources for high school students who are looking for financial aid between the guidance counselor, your office, that will help them guide them towards that process. Now, for say the non-traditional student, say the person coming back who's been working and wants to come back,
Mhm.
what would be their first step towards seeking financial aid?
Again, they would start with the FAFSA.
Mhm.
Um, we do reach out. A lot of our academic advisors here on campus, when they sit down and start talking, we do training workshops with our academic advisors. They know that the FAFSA is available. They instruct the student. A lot of times they will walk the student over here so that we can help them and show them what they need to do. So we try to reach out to all the folks that are working with students to try and remind them, hey, it's time to get your FAFSA done. And because once we get it, it can go through a process called verification where we have to collect documents and verify what's on the FAFSA. If they don't use the IRS database data retrieval tool in the FAFSA, a lot of times they'll have to submit their tax returns so we can verify the information that's been input. Um, so
So, yeah, that's a very lengthy process, and I think very, very necessary. But can you help me understand? The reason all this exists is so that students can get their education paid for through government loans or other loans, and so we need all this documentation to ensure we're doing the right thing, we're stewarding that money correctly. Those are the requirements to get the grants, right?
correct.
Okay.
And ISU has to show that we have the administrative capability to do that. And we are audited almost every year on,
Oh, wow.
on our,
Wow.
on our processes here in the office. So
So I have a
I didn't realize
question.
that. Wow.
So, okay, I have a question for you, James. As everything, including housing and school and education, the affordability becomes weakened, is there any sort of education for students who are taking out loans on what those interest rates are, repayment processes, affordability of programs, et cetera?
yes, we do have our consumer information, which as far as the cost of attendance and things like that. Um, and all of this is on our website at isu.edu, Fin8, or it's pretty easy to find. You just get to the ISU website, click on quick links, and you'll see financial aid, and click on that, and it'll take you straight to our webpage. But yes, when a student, let's just take, for example, an incoming freshman, and they've decided to take out a student loan. And again, no student is required to take out a student loan. We show them what they're eligible for, and the family and the student decide how much they want to take. They would, once they accept the student loan, then they would have to do what's called the entrance interview, which is it's about a 20-minute task on a computer, which goes over the rights and responsibilities of the student, of being a student loan borrower. And then they would sign their electronic promissory note, which is good basically for their entire time in college. And when they reach the end of the road 4 or 5 years later, as they're leaving, we do remind them that they need to do an exit interview, which basically goes over all of the same things, tells them how to get in touch with their lender, tells them what the terms are. You know, typically most students go into repayments 6 months after graduation. For the subsidized loan, which does not accrue interest while the student is attending school, 6 months, it begins to accrue interest and payments become due. The unsubsidized loan has interest accruing the entire time. And at repayment, if they have not made those interest payments, and they're not required to, if they haven't made those payments, it is capitalized to the principal balance, which means it's added on to the principal, and then they start their payment process. It's been a little weird since 2020. All student loan payments have been suspended. That is ending, I believe, in May. And so students will be receiving notifications from their former students who are in repayment, will be receiving notifications from their loan servicers as to what's required, and they will need to start back up the payment process.
Wow. That's a lot, and I can imagine as a young student coming in with a family trying to figure this out and going, I don't understand a lot of what you just said. So you probably find a lot of times you and your team have to explain things to the families and the students to help them understand where they're at in this. Is that right?
We spend a lot of time counseling and doing those sort of things. And in the past year, I've been fortunate enough to hire 2 new counselors, and both are bilingual, English and Spanish.
Oh, nice.
And that has been that's just been a blessing. As we see our Hispanic population in Southeast Idaho continue to grow, the fact that I can have a native speaker sit down with a family and explain things in their native tongue, just you can see, you can watch them interact with the family, and you can see the family relax.
Yeah,
It becomes a
yeah.
far less intimidating process.
Yeah, I'm
So-
sure that's extremely helpful and comforting to families. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you run into any challenges with we have Fort Hall next to us, and certainly we want their students to come from the high school into our programs. Are there opportunities for grants that they take advantage of through us, or do they have their own?
It's actually both. They're all eligible for participation in the federal Title IV programs.
Mhm.
And then there's also tribal scholarships, which we work with the tribe, and the tribe determines, how much they're going to be able to pay all their students every year. And ISU also has the tuition program for the seven registered tribes in Idaho, where they receive a discounted tuition in recognition of the fact that we're sitting on their land.
Right, right. Oh, well, that's cool. That's good to know too. How about if I can say, how about international students? I mean, we have some international students. Do you get involved with their payments at all?
International students are not eligible for Title IV-A, so
Okay.
we don't work with them. There are some scholarships, and Deb Green, our scholarship director, is going to be on in a few weeks, and she'll be able to go over what our international students may be eligible for.
Excellent.
Well, excellent.
So, James, quick question. When you're dealing with potential students that are coming in looking for financial aid information, these are usually young people coming in from high school. Do you find that, they just go, yeah, I just want to get in, and it's the parents that are more concerned about their financial obligation? Or do you see that the students who's more concerned about that financial obligation that they're making, the young students or their parents?
Paul, I'll tell you, it is all over the map.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some students who know their parents can't afford to help them, so they're very concerned. And you have some other students that are, they're here because their parents want them to be here.
Mhm.
But I'll relate a real quick story. When my daughter went to University of Idaho, and when we went up there for freshman pre-registration, I went in to see some of my colleagues who I've worked with for years in their financial aid office. And while we were waiting, there was a mother and a daughter working with one of their assistant directors, associate director. And the mother and the daughter were just waterfalls. I mean, the tears were pouring.
Wow.
And my daughter's sitting there watching this. And finally, the mother turned to her daughter and she said, "I'm sorry, but we're just not going to be able to make this happen. We can't afford it." And they left the office. And my daughter turned to me and says, "Do you have to do that, Dad?" And I said, "Yes, I've had that conversation."
Mhm.
So, but we really tried. There are some things that we have, a few years back when FMC closed the plant, a lot of those students came in. We worked with the Department of Labor. We did a lot of presentations out at the plant to the workers. They were going, the loss of that position, they were going from, at the time, there were $70,000 and $80,000 jobs to we're unemployed. And there are things that we can do if a family's financial situation changes. So anytime a family, whether it's layoff, whether it's death in the family, whether it's divorce, there's things that, the financial aid folks at whatever college they're going to, we need to know about that stuff, because sometimes we can do things to do a recalculation of their aid, and see if we can't get them eligible for additional funding.
Mhm.
We call that special circumstances. The feds call it exercising our professional judgment. So, but we really do try to work with families in cases where there's significant changes. And now that we're using taxes, we used to always use year-old taxes. Now we're using tax returns that are 2 years old. The feds did that because really most people's income doesn't change a whole lot year to year. They've got about a bazillion records, that
Right.
they can justify that. But it's also much easier. Hold on. It's also much easier for the family to have that information available and for it to be available in the IRS database.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, super.
So
That, yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
yeah, so I know when a student comes in and they finally enroll and they finally start their classes, they create these relationships with their instructors, and they have those memories of, do you have any, like any sort of connection with the students that you provide financial aid for? I mean, do they understand the work that it goes into trying to get them the aid that they need to get through school?
Um, it can go a lot of different ways, relationships. We do have requirements. The student is required to maintain satisfactory academic progress. Sometimes when they fail to do that, we have to interact with them. The kind of the joke in the financial aid offices is if we know your name, that may not be a great sign, because we have hundreds of students that go through our process and they never even have to walk up to our counter.
James,
But we do
that
interact with students.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, James, that's so funny because I'm the apprenticeship coordinator here at our department. And
Mhm.
there's like the students that could do all their work, they go through, I could not tell you their names,
Yep.
but I know all the names of the other students. So yeah, so
But
I can
but every
relate.
now and then we'll get a thank you card from one of our students, or one of our students will nominate one of my employees for uh, the bingo employee of the week or month or whatever it is these days. And
Yeah.
we've had
Mhm.
several recipients. So,
Yeah,
but
that's cool.
I've got a folder full of thank you cards from students, most of whom I couldn't tell you who they were. Um, they're just somebody I helped, and
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Hey, go ahead,
those
Paul.
are the things that
no,
make this job really worth it.
well, that's the whole thing. I mean, you guys are trying to provide them the financial support so that they can basically reach for their dreams and
Correct.
do what they, try to get that career that they've always dreamed of. I mean, some kids, I talked to some kids at the high school a few weeks ago, and some of them already know what they want to do and they aspire to, to get into school and do that. And sometimes they need that financial support to be able to obtain those dreams.
Uh,
Yeah.
College has gotten so incredibly expensive. I probably went about back when Gary was, and before I became a college student, I'd actually gone to a trade school, a technical school, and I'd learned to be a welder, and I worked as a welder before I went to college. It was very easy for me to make enough money in the summertime to pay my full year tuition. It's pretty hard to do that now.
Mhm.
That's to me, that's the real difference that I've seen, from when I went to school to what our incoming students are facing now.
Yeah,
You're not going to be able to work 3 months in the summertime. Very few students can earn enough money to pay the tuition and their living expenses.
right, right. Yeah, you're so right. James, same story. I worked summers and I paid for my semesters and worked through school. But it's
Yep.
so tough now. Um,
Yep.
Costs are high. Hey, you probably heard our alarm go off, so we've reached the end of our 20 minutes. But we really do want to make sure that anybody who has questions knows how to reach out to you or your office. You mentioned the website before.
Right.
It's the ICU, then look for the financial aid. You called it FinAid, I think.
Yeah.
Q. But if somebody did want to reach back and learn more, where would you tell them to go, or is there a phone number they could call?
The phone number is to reach our office is 208-282-2756. In addition, if you go to the directory, you'll probably find most of our counselors listed. All of us, well, I know I have my personal phone here on my desk. That number is listed. I answer my own phone. If somebody has a question, they can call me, 208-282-2341. Or if
Yes.
there's another counselor that they want to talk to, pick up the phone and call them.
There you go. Super, super, very much, very, very much appreciated. And thank you, James, for all of our folks out there. This has been James Martin. He's the Director of Financial Aid here at Idaho State University. Got a ton of experience, 31 years plus, and has a great team back there. And if you have questions, if you want to learn more about financial aid, you need financial aid, this sounds like a great contact to reach out to. And today, coming to school, it is a little bit more expensive. So do look him up, do look that team up, and get those questions you have answered. James, thank you for making the time to be here. I really appreciate your helping me understand better, and the rest of us in the audience. Hey, everybody, Paul, Angela, wonderful having you back and working together again. Maybe it's time we wrap this up.
Time to wrap this up. James, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. Angie, as always, and Gary, can't do this without you.
And again, thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you so much. If anyone wants to get a hold of us, they can visit our website at cetrain.isu.edu. You can email us at cetrain@isu.edu. You can call us at 208-282-3372. And if you like this podcast, please think about subscribing, liking, sharing, get the word around. We do appreciate that. Gary, thank you so much. Man, I can't do this without you.
Yeah. Yes, you can. You're the voice, man. Angela as well. Hey, appreciate everybody. The rest of you out there, you all be safe, especially in the cold weather. Enjoy that long weekend.